Since 1972, the McIlvaney Financial Group has been a conservative, contrarian investment firm. With that mindset, they have created a multifaceted approach to portfolio management, offering a wide array of services including hedging through precious metals, wealth advising, a unique short fund, and an excellent educational resources. We have had David McIlvaney on our show multiple times because we respect his outlook, viewpoints, and recommendations. You really need to take advantage of the free portfolio risk analysis and bank safety ratings they're offering our listeners. Just call them at 1-800-525-9556, and you will be put in touch with an advisor with years of experience who can take 15 minutes and give you a much better understanding of what true portfolio diversification is. Again, call them at 1-800-525-9556 and benefit from their expertise. Hi everyone, this is Jason Barrick of Wall Street from Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street from Main Street podcast interview. Today's special guest is a returning guest. He's derivatives expert and former derivatives broker and trader in Toronto. He's worked in the financial industry for over 20 years. Rob Kirby, thank you for joining me again.
Pleasure to be with you, Jason.
And you also write the Kirby Analytics newsletter too, which a lot of people in the gold industry enjoy. Now, Rob, I specifically want to ask you about the gold and silver physical market. You know, the paper price the last couple of days, there's been an attempt to knock it back down. Do you think the physical market is preventing the paper prices from knocking the paper price down even further?
Let's just put it this way. What's caught my attention more than anything in the last, call it week to 2 weeks, has been the growth in open interest of silver futures contracts on the COMEX exchange, with the knockdown of silver from, call it $18.60 to roughly $18 today. Typically on a smash down in the paper price, we would see a liquidation of open interest on the COMEX exchange, and we haven't seen that at all. And in fact, we've seen a build to absolute record all-time levels of open interest on the COMEX silver contracts. And what that tells me is very likely there's a new sheriff in town, in terms of there may very well be strong money that's going to stand for delivery and create real havoc in the very, very near future on COMEX, specifically regarding silver. Typically, when we get the smash downs in the paper price, there's liquidation of open interest. People that are long futures contracts typically and historically have liquidated on big movements in price downward. And in silver, this just isn't happening right now, and very little of it's occurring in gold as well. Mind you, the gold open interest is still very far off its all-time open interest high. And to sort of quantify the numbers I'm talking about on the silver, the open interest has swelled to 230,000 contracts open, and each silver contract is 5,000 ounces of silver. So that means that there is basically been sold by paper players over 1 billion ounces of silver that I would contend does not exist and will never exist, because there is nowhere in the world you can go right now and purchase 1 billion ounces of physical silver. I think you'd be very hard pressed to probably find any more than 100 or maybe 150 million ounces of physical silver anywhere in the world right now. So that sort of bookends my comments on what we're seeing happening. And I must say, what we're seeing happening is, relating to the COMEX and the silver contracts, in my personal view, it represents unmitigated fraud on the part of U.S. regulators who've allowed this obscene amount of paper silver to be sold when there's absolutely no way anybody in the world could possibly be able to assemble a package of physical silver to meet anywhere near the amount of paper contracts that have been sold. So in this example, we truly have the derivative paper dog wagging the physical price of silver. And ultimately it means that the price of silver and the price of general precious metals in general is being set fraudulently on paper exchanges, where where regulators have turned a blind eye to this fraudulent, heinously fraudulent selling, and I'm left with no other conclusion, Jason, other than to say that these positions in paper can be none other than the U.S. Treasury itself through the Exchange Stabilization Fund that's doing the selling of metal to make the dollar look strong when it isn't.
Yeah, and Trump doesn't even want a strong dollar. But I want to add to your points there about the manipulation. You know, before CFTC Chairman Gary Gensler left the CFTC to go be the campaign finance manager for Hillary Clinton's run for president, he actually admitted, and this, my friend was actually there in attendance, it was a regular investing conference, wasn't a gold and silver investing conference, and he was giving a speech about regulation and CFTC, and he was talking about high-frequency trading algorithms and market manipulation, and someone in the crowd asked him about gold and silver manipulation, and Gary Gensler just said yes. He actually admitted that gold and silver are heavily manipulated in the paper markets and with trading algos. And then his response was the typical bullshit, you know, regulator Democrat response that, oh, we don't have enough money or resources to stop it. So my one of my good friends was actually there in attendance at this regular investing conference in New York City a few years ago, and he actually heard Gensler admit this. And, you know, in public in a lot of the speeches with the CFTC, they hadn't done this. I guess he was on the way out and didn't really care about admitting it, you know, at a conference. And there was, you know, Bloomberg journalists there. They didn't write any of this down. They didn't care about doing a story on this either.
Well, my attitude towards it, Jason, is what these people are doing and what they will do if charges are ever brought against them. They're going to use the Nuremberg defense. They're going to just say that they were following orders and they, you know, it was the government after all, and the government is who hired them and who pays them, and they couldn't, and it was all in the. They'll wrap themselves in the flag and say that this was all about national interest. Well, that's what a bunch of Hitler's top lieutenants did at Nuremberg. They said that it was all about the homeland and protecting the homeland, and they were following orders. And you know what? Somewhere down the road, this Nuremberg defense isn't going to cut it. And these people are going to be brought up on charges because what they've done amounts to high financial crimes against humanity. Yeah, and you know what? There's no other way to frame it other than to say it the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. It's financial terrorism, and, you know, they're destroying people's standard of living. They're just destroying their savings. They're ruining people's lives, and people don't even realize it, you know, because a lot of people still believe in government that it's friendly and tries to do the right thing. A lot of the regulators, Rob, I know you follow, you know, corruption in government as well. A lot of regulators and a lot of government agencies have not been doing their job, especially in the United States, for a long time.
Yes, and anyway, my feeling is there will be a day when there will be payback. And payback is going to hurt.
Rob, I want to ask you about the refiners in Switzerland and India being able to source large amounts of physical gold. I've interviewed other people for the last month, like Jeff Clark, who's the senior precious metal analyst at goldsilver.com. He says Indian refiners are having trouble sourcing physical gold and that they've offered premiums to the scrap market in India out of desperation. I've interviewed other people who've spoken with large Swiss refiners that they've had to add capacity for refining, and they're having problems sourcing metal. They're running the refinery 24/7, 365, and they have 3-year back orders to meet demand for sending, you know, 4.9 kilobars to China. Is that what you're also hearing for refiners and sourcing metal?
Yeah, this is a process that's been ongoing for a number of years. And what it is, what you're getting a descriptive of, Jason, is big players in Asia who have voracious demand for physical metal, not paper contracts. They've done a thing that's called going direct to the pit, and what they've done is they've circumvented the usual movement of raw gold out of jurisdictions like Latin America and Africa by going directly to sourcing the raw metal and interdicting the flow of raw metal that normally goes through the refinery loop in the Western world, and instead they've interdicted and they've deflected or diverted that metal, the raw metal that's been coming out of the ground. They're diverting it to places like Dubai and places like Hong Kong, where it's being refined up, and a lot of this stuff is flying completely under the radar of the World Gold Council, and and the amount of physical metal that's being accumulated by Asian players, it cannot be measured by published numbers. And you see, but this is a strategy that's been employed by these people years ago, and by going direct to the pit or direct to the source, what they've been able to do is effectively drain the swamp, as it were, relative, like the amount of physical or raw gold that used to go through the loop and with the Swiss refiners, a lot of it's been cut off, and it's been deflected to other areas where, like I say, it flies under the radar, and this process has been ongoing and will continue to intensify, meaning physical metal will become even more hard to source as time goes along.
Yeah, and there's been record amounts of on the export data out of Switzerland for gold is actually pretty accurate. So I think there was a record for Shanghai Gold Exchange withdrawals in November 2016 and February 2017. One of the months, Rob, had 160 tons of gold going from Switzerland to mainland China.
Sure, and a lot of that, you must figure, even though it will never be admitted, a lot of it has to be central bank gold.
That's very interesting, and we know that the People's Bank of China doesn't buy on the Shanghai Gold Exchange because they want to get their dollars and treasuries. They want to either buy in London or Switzerland or other areas instead. Well, I want to ask you now about the miners. You know, we're at a price now. We're back a little bit below $18 an ounce silver. The miners have cut costs to the bone the last 6 years or so. It looks to me like the miners are not going to be able to replace reserves. So do you think then that this is going to exacerbate the supply problems in the near future?
Yes, I do believe that. And I think the biggest, Steve St. Angelo has just done a very good piece on the supply of silver going forward. And he postulates that the biggest negative going forward for the supply of silver is going to be if we get any sort of an economic, global economic collapse type event. The demand for base metals, zinc, copper, and lead, which is where about a third of global annual silver supply comes from as a byproduct of the manufacture or extraction of lead, zinc, and copper. If the demand for any of those three metals is to decline precipitously, the amount of lead, zinc, and copper mining will be ground down significantly, which will remove from the global annual stream of physical silver a dramatic amount. So I see coming to fruition in the relatively near offing, because I think the global outlook for economic growth is slowing, and which means these base metals are not going to be being mined at the same rate that we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think the miners have high-graded a lot of their mines, and the long-term project economics of their mines, they basically destroyed it in order to delay bankruptcy. But I've looked at the project economics of a lot of new potential silver mines, Rob, and it looks like the only new silver mine that's going to come online that's pretty close to economic next couple of years is Mag Silver out of Mexico. Almost all the other new potential silver mines need $25, $30 an ounce silver minimum in order to build a mine.
Yep, there's going to be big supply issues going forward. Absolutely.
I want to transition now and ask you about President Trump. In your opinion, has he done anything you like so far?
He's done some things that I like and I would say I approve of, but I have very huge concerns at this point that his presidency has been undermined and that he's basically been forcibly put in a position where he's ended up with a bunch of neocons surrounding him. This McMaster character, Jared Kushner, ascendancy to major, seemingly advisor to me anyway, and these what I perceive to be the shunting of Bannon to the sidelines in terms of being an alternative to the globalist voice. I'm extremely concerned that President Trump is now receiving too much advice from people that I refer to as globalists, and that scares me. And it just seems to me that Trump's actions of the last couple of weeks, his intervention in Syria, his bellicose nature with Russia and with North Korea, which to me represents foreign entanglements, seems to be the opposite to what he campaigned on, and to me it raises very, very great concerns. And frankly, I'm very, very concerned about the well-being of humanity going forward. I think we're getting very, very close to a nuclear event, possibly nuclear Armageddon on a global scale, and I'm very concerned about it. And I don't like what I'm seeing. Yeah. And hopefully Trump will come to his senses and realize that he's getting input from too many globalists, and he'll backtrack on this. But you know what? We're just going to wait and see on that front.
He really needs to start firing people, Rob. I mean, this man made an art of firing people. He was a TV star, reality TV star with The Apprentice for years, firing people in all kinds of different ways. And yet, you know, he's scared. He's gun shy, trigger shy now about firing people that a lot of people think it's obvious he should fire. His chief of staff, Reince Priebus, who's been leaking stuff. Jared Kushner, his son, yes, he's his son-in-law, but he's been leaking stuff to MSNBC and other places. He should be fired too. You know, he has way too many Goldman Sachs people surrounding him right now, and he has way too many neocons. The other guy who I think should be fired is the head of the FBI, Comey. I don't know why he keeps Comey around. You know, my source is the stuff Comey has gotten away with here in the D.C. area for years now since he became the head of the FBI is just ridiculous. He should have been fired the day Trump got in there. So he needs to clean house. Did you hear that he's being sabotaged, that he can't even get like bureaucracy people in because a lot of the Democrats there won't allow security clearances for his own people?
Yes, I'm up the curve on that, and I've heard that articulated very clearly already. And this also just scares me. It just seems to me that anybody who is not a globalist, who is in the sphere of Donald Trump, is targeted and demonized to the point where it becomes inevitable that they, you know, meet their demise. Yeah, and I find that scary.
Well, the mainstream media is targeting specific people to cripple, you know, the power of his administration, especially his domestic agenda. Like General Flynn, who was very he was anti-war with Russia. He wanted to negotiate with Russia and have a good working relationship with them, you know, go after ISIS. The mainstream media targeted him, and, you know, that was illegal leaks with Susan Rice and the other stuff. And then Bannon. So Bannon the media just hates him. They've gone on a campaign against Bannon for a long time. And, you know, they've reduced his power in the administration. I don't think he's fully gone yet officially, but he's off the National Security Council. He's almost gone. And, you know, it's just real bad because I think, you know, Bannon was one of the major reasons why Trump pulled ahead towards the last couple months was Trump was listening to his advice.
Yeah, no, I concur with exactly what you just said, and I find that to be a very scary development.
Yeah, and I mean, Trump has stopped TPP, so I think that's good for one of the few good things he's done so far. And yes, he's gotten a pro-constitutional judge pass in Neil Gorsuch, but look at all the crazy things that they have to do to get the judge through because the Democrats don't want someone who's in favor of the Constitution anymore. So welcome to dystopia, right? Things are getting crazy. I've heard, Rob, from some of my sources that he's going down to Mar-a-Lago in Florida every weekend, not because he likes the weather or likes to play golf. He does like to wine and dine people down there, but because that can reduce the leaks. Because there's all these, you know, hardcore Democrat White House staff, low-level employees who are literally taking any piece of top secret or classified information that they can get their hands on or conversation that they can overhear, and they're willing to go to prison to leak it to the mainstream media to undermine him.
And that gels with what I've heard is that the intelligence establishment has the White House bugged to 8 ways to Sunday, and that no secrets can be kept in the White House by the chief executive anymore. The very sad thing is what's emerging is the picture of the absolute runaway seeming coup that the deep state has had on the leadership of your country, and whether it's factions within the CIA, the FBI. I mean, it was very pitiful to sit and listen to Comey tell the House committee that he had no knowledge that Trump had been surveilled, and clear evidence has come forward that Comey, I guess through legalese, he perjured himself. The man sat and lied to lawmakers, about the the eavesdropping they were doing on Trump and his associates. This man Comey is a lying rat. This man Comey should be brought up on charges of sedition.
You're preaching to the choir, buddy. You know Comey. You know HSBC hired Comey because of his government contacts to get them off criminal charges of knowingly laundering billions of dollars in drug cartel money. That he was the hired gun, and he did it in exchange for a lot of money and also 3 years on the board of directors at HSBC Bank. So, and he has other checkered stuff in his past too. I've heard from one of my listeners that his brother, Peter Comey, was one of the accountants that the Clintons hired to do the taxes, the phony taxes on the Clinton Foundation, but I haven't looked into that yet to see if it's true.
Well, anyway, the man has the appearances of being a stooge and being a seditious traitor, a traitor to the United States of America.
Yeah, I'm just shocked, Trump's defending him, saying he's a good guy and deserves another chance. I mean, Trump has never had any problems firing anyone. So, now that he's president, I'm shocked he hasn't started firing people left and right.
I am too. Mind you, who do you get to replace him? Who would the deep state apparatus allow him to replace Comey with?
It's a good question. Trump says he has a whole list of people he would like to bring in for those positions, but they can't get security clearances. So I don't know, Matt. The problem is, Rob, that there's way too many lawyers here in D.C. And, now the people that have been running things for so long until Trump won the election, they've relabeled themselves this bullshit, the resistance, right? Even though they've been in control for so long, they're now the resistance. It's such ridiculous nonsense. It's obviously not reality at all. But, they're globalists. They don't like capitalism. They like the status quo. They like the corruption because a lot of them make enormous salaries off of it. So I don't know, man. It's going to be very tough for Trump to get rid of the corruption because they know all the little tricks. So anytime Trump tries to, fix one problem, the people can undermine him in a bunch of different ways, normally with legal stuff. So, it would help if Trump had a team of lawyers around him he could trust. But there's just so many lawyers in D.C. They know how to use all these different legal loopholes to slow him down and sabotage him.
Yeah, well, hubris will bring countries down.
Well, this has been going on, the corruption. I've talked about this for a long time now. The U.S. has been increasing in corruption for about 100 years since Woodrow Wilson was the first hardcore globalist president, with like the League of Nations, Federal Reserve, income tax, getting the U.S. into World War I when we really had no business being in that war. So, it's basically accelerated since then.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's worthy of maybe mentioning here too, which scares the bejeepers out of me. Have you heard of this? It's called Nuclear Detonation Drill in New York City, Operation Gotham Shield, 2017. On April 18th through May 5th, 2017, state, local, and federal organizations alike are planning for Operation Gotham Shield 2017, a major nuclear detonation drill for the New York, New Jersey area along with the U.S.-Canadian border. During this exercise, 4 nuclear devices, 2 of which are rendered safe during the U.S. Department of Defense Vital Archer exercise, and 1 successful 10-kiloton detonation in the New York City, New Jersey area, along with 1 smaller detonation on the U.S.-Canadian border, are to take place. This stuff is all centered around the dates of the 24th and 25th of April, the very days when the 3 carrier group armada is supposed to arrive off the shores of North Korea, with the 25th being the date that North Korea has stated that they're going to detonate a test nuclear device. And, this was brought to my attention earlier today by Dr. Dave Janda. And, he was trying to connect some dots, and I think there's a lot of merit in his analysis, because it's been in the last 2 weeks that off the western coast of America, there have been spotted submarine hunter planes. Who knows whose submarines they're looking for, but I do believe it's known that the North Koreans own a good number of submarines, and what they have the ability to launch from them, I don't know. But it just seems to me that things are very likely. It's being telegraphed to me that things are coming to a head in North Korea. Not only what I've just mentioned, but also China has reportedly moved 150,000 troops up to their border with North Korea. And likewise, Russia has also moved a lot of military personnel and apparatus up to their border with North Korea and Russia. So the whole thing is, this is the sort of thing you would expect China and Russia to do if they had foreknowledge or an inkling that armed fisticuffs were about to break out, because they'd want to stem a rapid influx of immigrants or into their countries, people trying to escape the conflict. So I just think it seems to me we may very well be on a very razor's edge here, and we also know that the globalists have a penchant for doing the real deed when these drills or practice are being carried out. And it just seems to me that when you have a big nuke drill occurring in New York City and the New Jersey area for next week, could they use this as because and the other thing that all of this stuff coincides with is a very, very, very shaky global financial system, and I don't believe that the geopolitical heat is being turned up to a seemingly very, very, very high heat at the very same time when the global financial edifice seems to be looking like it could collapse. And because the globalists have a history, the elitists have a history of taking us to war when financial systems fail. And it just seems to me that the stars are aligning that this could very well be in play, and could be in play in the very, very immediate future.
I hadn't heard that about the nuclear tests in the New York City area. I had heard in the last couple weeks, though, that the U.S. military was testing next-generation nuclear weapons in the Nevada desert in the last couple weeks, though. So
but Jason, all you have to do is Google. This only came out today. Just Google Gotham Shield 2017.
Well, that actually ties into one of my next questions. Why hasn't another global financial crisis occurred yet after the 2008 financial crisis, in your opinion?
Why hasn't it? Because largely due to the interference and manipulation of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the dubiously secret arm of the U.S. Treasury, with unbelievable dark money resources at its disposal. And I think they've been propping up the bond market, and I'm certain they've been propping up the bond market, and they've also been the mustard behind the suppression of the precious metals, which has made the dollar look strong when it in fact isn't. And along with the generous application since 2008 of financial derivatives, that have been used to stealthily bail out insolvent U.S. banking institutions, like Morgan Stanley, and very likely, and like AIG, and like Goldman Sachs, and so it's how many rabbits can you pull out of a hat before there are no more rabbits in the hat? And I think we're very likely getting to the bottom of the black hat.
Yeah, to add to your points there also, we know that not only have they propped up the bond market and manipulated other markets, certain markets they want to manipulate up, like the stock market, the real estate market, the bond market, other markets they want to keep in check, like precious metals. Ron Paul was able to get that one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve was bailing out foreign governments, foreign central banks, foreign corporations, American corporations, $19 trillion, over $19 trillion in interest-free loans we found out was given out during the 2008 financial crisis just on a one-time partial audit. So if we were able to actually, audit the Federal Reserve and find out, some of the other loans they've been giving out recently to delay the financial crisis, I don't think, regular people would believe the amount of money that's been printed to delay the next financial crisis.
I think the reality, Jason, is that most people don't have any idea how much money is actually in existence. The amount of money in existence, in my view, is much, much, much larger than what's admitted. And the reason people don't see it is because it's all housed in this dark entity called the Exchange Stabilization Fund that has unthinkable wealth. It's just that they don't. Despite the blather of the likes of James Rickards, who claims that the Exchange Stabilization Fund publishes annual results, which they don't, they are the repository of unthinkable amount of dark money, because you see, the Exchange Stabilization Fund was created in 1934, and back in 1934 it was seeded with $3 billion. And the $3 billion in 1934 dollars overnight made the Exchange Stabilization Fund the most powerful financial entity on the planet. It had more money than the U.S. Treasury in its day. And these people basically operate above all laws, and they don't answer to anyone. There's no oversight for the ESF. They don't answer to Congress. They don't answer to the Senate. They don't answer to anyone. And they're operated basically at the discretion of the Treasury Secretary of the United States, and these people have a free rein to operate in any market they deem necessary in the name of national defense. So and for national security. So by nature, anything they do, anything that the ESF does, anything that's done in their name, is by its very nature, by its description, is national security, which means nobody talks about it. So if James Rickards claims that he actually knows about what's going on in the ESF, James Rickards might as well change his name to Edward Snowden. And because anybody who talks about, and this is why, by the way, no analyst on Wall Street and nobody from government will discuss or have a sincere dialogue about what the ESF is there for or what it does, because everything it does is top secret. And it's really brutal that this institution has been allowed to make its way in our global capital markets and to make a shambles of what were once relatively free markets, and to urinate and defecate its way through our global capital market edifice, polluting and destroying every semblance of free markets. You see, and this is what the rest of the world has caught on to, and this is what's really at the root of international tensions, because you've got these imperialist fools in America who think that they can dictate the price of all strategic commodities to everybody in the world. And, in doing so, they're conducting dishonest commerce, and they're taking advantage of every other country in the world, who, by the way, all the other countries in the world have to work for a living, and America, seemingly, all they have to do is print money. And this is not a good recipe for healthy, international relations, and this explains in large part why the world is so mixed up and so conflicted right now. It's because of the abuse. It's because of the absolute abuse, financial abuse being conducted by agents of the U.S. government.
Yeah, there's no real trade. There's not a lot of real trade going on. The U.S.'s largest export is either paper dollars or digital dollars to other countries. They work their ass off to produce goods and services to the U.S. to send it here, and we just send them almost unlimited amounts of dollars. There is no oversight as well, Rob, for the Bank of International Settlements, the Federal Reserve, and other central banks either. So I'm sure they're working with the Exchange Stabilization Fund, or aware of them, and it's not like those guys are audited as well either. And a lot of those guys are basically unelected bureaucrats, with their globalist, hardcore central planning, Keynesian economics agenda, using all these fake government numbers, whether it's fake GDP, fake jobs numbers, fake inflation statistics, etc.
You got it.
Well, do you think the Fed? I interviewed Danielle DiMartino Booth, who worked at the Dallas Federal Reserve for 9 years. She wrote a book called Fed Up recently. She's fed up with how things are at the Federal Reserve. She thinks they're ruining the U.S. economy a lot. Do you think the Federal Reserve would increase interest rates, 3 or 4 times the rest of the year to crash asset prices to hurt Trump so he wouldn't get elected? Or do you think, they would be so worried that if they did increase interest rates too quickly or too many times that it would crash everything?
I don't believe that there's going to be any meaningful rise in interest rates. I mean, look what's happened to the long end of the curve since they've raised rates a couple times in the last 6 months. We've seen the 10-year bond go from roughly 260 down to 220 roughly today, and we've seen the curve flatten. And the first casualty, if rates are actually raised to anywhere near a normal, what would be considered normalized rates, the first casualty would be the U.S. government itself. The United States government cannot afford to pay market rates of interest, period. Their debt is too big. And the reality is, on a go-forward basis, they can't even afford to pay the low rates we have now, because there are no takers for new U.S. debt. The Fed is posturing that they're going to reduce their balance sheet.
Yeah, I don't believe them.
And my comeback to that is, who are they going to sell it to? There are no takers for additional U.S. debt. The Chinese, the Japanese, and the Sauds have been sellers of existing U.S. debt over the last 18 months to 2 years. So what that means is, because America still continues to add a new trillion in debt, in their annual budgetary deficits. They add a new trillion of new additional debt each year, and the existing holders of the existing debt aren't even sitting with what they had. So they're not buying any of the new debt, and they're getting rid of debt they had. Who's going to buy the debt?
No one voluntarily, Rob. I've thought about this a lot too. Yeah. There's $19 trillion in U.S. retirement accounts, but they wouldn't voluntarily buy it. I've thought about the U.S. government, if there was a crisis, potentially forcing people to buy some of this garbage. So, for maybe they do an announcement, the president does an announcement, or Janet Yellen does an announcement and says, for national security purposes, everyone in their retirement accounts is going to have to own 1 or 2% of U.S. Treasuries. And then you know how it is, once the camel has its nose under the tent, they could say it's only temporary, it's just for national security. Then they can start increasing that, dumping on people. But you're right, people aren't going to voluntarily want to buy all this junk on the Fed's balance sheet. It would have to be, a government law under penalty of, huge fines or imprisonment or something to force people to buy this junk.
Well, Jason, it's my view and my contention that who's been buying this debt to date has very likely been the Exchange Stabilization Fund itself. And what they're doing is they're black holing U.S. debt that there are no takers for. So that to me is where a good portion of it's going currently. But see, that's another game of pulling rabbits out of the hat, and you can only do that for so long too. The problem going forward is we've got a problem of too much debt, and it's not going to be solved by increasing the debt, and raising rates will only bring about the demise of the current system quicker. And therefore, I don't believe that rates are going to be raised in any meaningful fashion.
So you think then the Fed can get away with like a couple 25 basis point increases, a couple more of those, and since that's not meaningful, they could say to the market, hey, look, we raise interest rates, we still have credibility, and it doesn't really mean anything then.
Listen, the next move by the Federal Reserve might very well be to lower interest rates instead of raise them.
Do you expect a system reset then in the next couple years, some type of either new currencies issued, a new dollar? Jim Willies talked about this, maybe like an international trading dollar versus a domestic dollar. Do you expect a new reset then? And China and Russia look like they're making plans to set up for a new global financial system. Do you think then that they're buying gold in hopes, lots of physical gold in hopes of protecting themselves for the next system?
I think the next system will have gold at its core. And yes, I do think we are going to get a global reset, and I don't believe after the global reset occurs, I don't believe that dollars are going to be the means by which international trade accounts are settled.
That's very interesting. Do you think that Russia and China have a lot of the infrastructure, the pipes, the foundation laid to actually turn the new system on in the near future, or do you think they still have a lot of work to do?
I think that they are absolutely there right now with the ability to flip a switch and continue themselves conducting trade in non-dollar terms. Yes.
So what's going to happen then, Rob, to all the U.S.'s trading partners who are holding lots of physical dollars? Are they just going to be totally shit out of luck then?
Well, I think what's going to likely happen is an awful lot of those dollars will attempt to come home to America, and will set off an extreme inflationary event in America. And I think that America is going to have its standard of living cut dramatically and very suddenly. And that may very well be why we're posturing for war right now, because the people running America, the hubris-full globalist neocon jackasses that are currently running America may very well know the writing's on the wall, and they might just decide to pull the plug. Because don't forget, globalism at its very core is a eugenics-based movement, and these people want the population of this planet reduced by about 90%. And it seems to me a global nuclear war might just suit them, suit their fancy very well, because these people are so hubris full that they actually believe they can survive and win a nuclear war. They're utter fools.
That's very interesting. Yeah, on Main Street here in the United States, I see, rent, food, healthcare, utility bills, the basic things people need to survive. These things are going up basically every year in price. In a lot of major cities, they're going up double digits, so 10% or more per year. So that to me is stagflation. I see stagflation accelerating worse and worse. I don't see a lot of full-time jobs being created yet, although Trump has brought back some jobs. It's just not replacing a lot of the jobs that are lost for a lot of different reasons. So I see inflation increasing a lot, mostly stagflation though, but we haven't had a world reserve currency, Rob, in history, in modern history, go through a hyperinflation. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the future.
Yes, I think it's listen. These are unparalleled times to be alive, and and in some ways you could say it's a very exciting time to be alive. But it's to me it's fraught with issues that could threaten the survival of very, very, very many people.
Yeah, it's going to be we're hearing from our listeners that, their bills are going up. It's very tough in that regard. YouTube is censoring the hell out of my channel. So they took away over $7,000 in annualized ad revenue from my channel. So that anyone who's libertarian or anti-Hillary Clinton or pro-Donald Trump or pro-gold and silver, they're really, the elites in the mainstream media are really going after already now. So that's probably another, signal that there is a financial crisis coming in the near future.
Let's hope not, but let's be prepared for whatever comes.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you for your time today. If our listeners want to read more of your comments at Kirby Analytics, how do they do so?
You can find me on the web at kirbyanalytics.com.
Wall Street for Main Street needs your help. YouTube stole $7,200 from Wall Street for Main Street in annualized YouTube AdWords revenues, and they kneecapped our analytics down by more than 80% across the board since September 2016 with their new censorship algorithms to stop the rapid growth of our channel. That was money we could have used to upgrade our website, pay bills, and invest in improving our content and growing our business. Our audience of loyal listeners is all over the globe and so large now that if most or all of our listeners were to commit to donating $1 to $5 each month to our Patreon account, we could easily meet our goal on Patreon. Wall Street for Main Street also accepts one-time donations on our main wallstreetformainstreet.com website. That's WALLSTFORMAINST.com website via PayPal, Gold Money, or Bitcoin. We also accept donations of physical precious metals that can be mailed to us. Thanks to all listeners who have already made a donation, and thanks in advance to any listeners who make a future donation or contribution to the growth, improvement, and success of Wall Street for Main Street.